Food equity is one of the biggest issues in the world today. It affects many and has many causes. Non-government organisations have been trying to end it for decades, but it seems to be a much bigger problem than the average person expects. There are many groups at risk of food inequity. Two of them are low-income and unemployed people. They can't afford healthy and nutritious food, or are often forced to consume unhealthier foods as they are cheaper. They would probably spend a large amount of their meagre earnings on food, so they wouldn't be able to afford other necessities. Also, rural and isolated people. They can't gain access to much variety of foods. They may have an abundant supply of their crop, but they wouldn't have as much access to other foods, especially if they need foods that spoil, such as milk or fresh fruit. Isolated people are even harder. They would need to travel massive distances to go shopping, and if they couldn't afford to drive, then they'd have a massive problem. Factors that influence food availability and distribution include geography and climate. In Australia at the moment, we're having a massive drought that's affecting most of the farmers in the country. This means that they have difficult access to water to grow their crops, as well as to drink, feed their livestock, or to wash. This leads to a great reduction in food availability. If farmers weren't supported by the rest of the nation, as Aussies farmers are, to an extent, then they'd have to buy water. Multinationals. Big companies will buy land off small-scale farmers, quite often in developing countries, for ridiculously low prices, then sell back food for prices that people can't afford. Multinationals are also more likely to use other pesticides and other chemicals that can get into the environment, causing severe damage to food and water sources. These companies will ruin the lives of the poor while feeding the rich overpriced food. War. During a war, people aren't really concentrating on food availability, even though it's a massive problem. During a war, there would be too much fighting for people to grow crops or livestock, and no one would be selling, so people would have to steal food. This is true after a war, where there is a massive deficit of resources that will probably cause a famine. Technological developments. Food storage is a large part of food security. It greatly affects food availability and distribution. Food needs to be transported in a way that it's kept fresh, so technology would play a big part of that. A country with low technological development would be disadvantaged in terms of food distribution. Vital technologies such as refrigeration or transport that we take for granted would not be available to these countries. Natural disasters. They are one of the worst things to happen when it comes to food availability. A flood, cyclone, or an earthquake will just completely destroy a landscape, or making it difficult for support agencies to get through. A flood will also especially destroy farmland due to soil erosion, adding another complexity to the difficult task of rebuilding lives while being able to eat. Some people around the world struggle daily to find enough food. Even in Australia, there is a lot of food inequity. Unemployed and low-income people can't afford a variety of foods, and rural, isolated people and farmers have limited access to food cheaply. Problems such as war and natural disasters can ruin lives and starve people too. So we need to think about food equity as one of the biggest problems in the world. What will you do about it?